Training at Wildwood. Come out Thursday, September 12th for a morning training session with Chief John Yar of the Lakewood Fire Department. Chief Yar is the chief of department of the fastest growing and third largest municipality in the state of New Jersey. Come listen to how he is leading his dedicated group of members of the Lakewood Fire Department as they continue to transition their department to meet the town's growing needs. The New Jersey Deputy and Battalion Chiefs Association will be hosting their annual fire service seminar on Saturday, October 5th at the New Jersey City University. This year's speakers will include Chief Vincent Dunn, Chief Aaron Heller, and Chief Anthony Avillo, among many other great firematic minds. So scan the QR code now or find them on social media and get your tickets today. Hi, everybody. How are you? Welcome to run number 24 with Chief Buroczi. I'm an asshole. Chief Nick Buroczi of Hamilton Fire Department. Hamilton Fire Division. Chief Nick Buroczi is Battalion Chief of the Hamilton Fire Division. Started on the job with Hamilton Fire District 6 in 1994. He has over 30 years of experience in the fire service. Wanting to make the job better for everyone, he rose through the ranks of the executive board of Hamilton FMBA Local 84 and subsequently Local 284 when he was promoted to the rank of captain in 2007. Becoming president of Local 284 in 2013, both locals spearheaded a campaign to consolidate Hamilton Township's individual fire districts. The unions reached success in 2021 when all 8 individual fire districts dissolved into the Hamilton Fire Division. After reaching his goal, he did not seek re-election at the end of 2022. He is still actively involved with the state union. Through the New Jersey State FMBA, he is involved in state legislative committee and the critical incident management team. He then took on position as OEM coordinator in neighboring township of Bordentown in 2023, where he currently still serves. Without further interruption, Chief Nick Buroczi. I don't know. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Buroczi.
All right.
There you go. Yep, that's okay. Sorry. Everybody boshes it up. We're good.
All right. Well, how are you? How are you tonight?
Not too bad. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for taking the time.
Yep, I've been following it and talking to you last year when you wanted to start it. So looks like it took off pretty good for you.
It's going pretty well. People seem to be enjoying it. All right. So where did it start? Well, where were you born, raised? Where'd you grow up, and what made you want to do this?
I was born in Trenton, New Jersey, Chambersburg. Grew up there till I was a freshman in high school. My parents owned the bar there. Used to be called Santi's Bar, right across the street from the Keg. So from there, we ended up moving out to Hamilton Township, and I've been living out in Hamilton Township ever since. And I went to McCorston High School. That was my I was a Catholic boy all these years, so Catholic grammar school, Catholic high school. We also my friends out here. It's basically how I got started in the fire service was through them, because back then it was mostly all volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a good thing because you could try out if you liked the job or not, and start out that way. So, and actually back then it was so big into volunteerism that there was a wait list. So I actually had to wait on this list before I could actually get brought into the fire company, because there were so many people in the company itself.
Now, you worked in 16, and that was Whitehorse, right?
Whitehorse, yep.
Now, is that where you volunteered, or is that just because of civil
service?
That's where I volunteered.
That's where you
got offered. Okay. Oh, yep. All right.
I
Cool.
volunteered there, and then with the volunteer points, you were on because of the fire district, so you were on that list in that district,
Yeah.
and that's where I ended up getting hired in 1994. So I started in volunteering in 1989,
Okay.
and that's when I got in there.
All right. Excellent. Now, what? Now I obviously 89. I was just getting out of diapers. Yeah. Um. So no, it's probably a little bit sooner. Um. What was the makeup of the department? Like, because I remember before you guys all consolidated, it was this department was still working day shifts. This one was 7 days a week. This one was 24/7. What was Whitehorse doing at the time?
So back in 1989, all we had was paid drivers.
Okay.
Prior to just a guy in the firehouse, he would answer the telephones, self-dispatch from the stations itself. They had their own little dispatch consoles, and some stations actually weren't even that evolved yet. They had housemen who would just answer the phone. So, like the one of my friends that got me into the firehouse, he worked at Colonial as a houseman, and he would just answer the phone there, and then the volunteers would come up and take the trucks out. So back then, when I got in, it was 4 paid drivers on, and everybody else from the chief on down was a volunteer officer and
Okay.
firefighter.
Okay. All right. Now
Some of the
was
other stations were a little different, but
mhm.
similar. Some had housemen still, and stuff like that until we started to uh, put on more people.
Now what made you what made the mind go from, all right, you know what, this is something cool to do, to, you know what, I think I can make a career out of this.
So doing the job itself as a volunteer, I actually enjoyed it so much. And my dad, he used to be a body and fender person,
Okay.
so he would work in the body shop, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and the jobs weren't that wasn't so many jobs out there, fire jobs.
Mhm.
So I said, ah, let me try his career, see what he did. I did it for a year. I didn't like it. I enjoy getting my hands dirty, but not doing it as a career.
Yeah.
So then I tried doing computers, and I went to school for it, and then I worked at the Hibbert Group down in Trenton for a year or so, I guess, a couple years maybe. I worked there, and that I just couldn't do an office job. I hate being inside an office and all that. So I
Right.
like getting outside and get my hands dirty.
Okay.
So I ended up getting the job and getting married the same year. So 30 years on the job and then 30 years being married. And then I quit Hibbert. I tried to work at the Hibbert Group part time after that, but I couldn't keep both with that.
Okay.
There was a lot of overtime back then and getting called when storms and stuff like that. So it just wasn't able to do the two jobs.
All right.
Plus, I
And
worked
you
at the Acme too.
you mentioned 30 years. This episode is airing on Thursday night, the 25th. This is uh the Chief's 30th anniversary on the job in Hamilton Township. Congratulations,
Yep.
Chief.
Thank you. Thank you. 30
The
years and the same firehouse too that I'm
Oh
working
wow,
out of
still?
now.
Oh
Still.
wow.
Yep.
That's a
I
little
only
something
moved
something.
out to Mercerville after we consolidated probably to uh 6, 7 months, and then I got moved back to Whitehorse.
Okay. All right. And now of course you're
Yeah.
battalion chief and
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thankfully and blessed to get into the position where I am from all the mentors I had through the years and the experience and just everything that guys helped me out through the years was really great and got to me where I'm at right now.
all right. Well, we'll back up to to the other spectrum of the 30 years. Uh,
Uh-huh.
so
Yeah.
so how was it when you transitioned from transitioning from the volunteer to the career, especially in the same house? It's got to be a little. Wait a
So there's
second.
always that, yeah, there's always that fight, right? Back then, there was always that volunteer versus career fight.
Never.
Um,
I
but
don't know
never
what you're
had
talking
that.
about.
I
I don't
think
know
even
what you're
today it's
talking
still
about.
there. Yeah. So back then it was even worse, I think, for me a little bit because the night before that I started my position, August 1st, was I had a dumpster fire. I couldn't go to any calls after midnight. So that dumpster fire was like right
Yeah.
before midnight. Otherwise, they'd had to pay me. So they're like,
Uh,
anything after midnight, you're not going. So I ended up getting a dumpster fire prior to me getting hired as a volunteer. It was like my last call. And I was also volunteer president of the volunteer fire company.
oh,
So back in 1994, I was still doing, my volunteer stuff back and trying to do both at the same time. But it was hard back then because some guys accepted you that way and some guys didn't. It was just the way the culture was back then in the volunteer firehouses.
now were you allowed to still be a volunteer, a member of the volunteer fire company? You just couldn't
You could be
respond
a
anymore.
Yeah, you could be a member, but you just couldn't respond to fire calls. So basically, as
Okay,
a social member of that, and you could
gotcha.
still work the dinners and and
Yeah,
do the fundraisers and all that back then. So
you
that
just
kind
couldn't
of
do the
worked out
fun
that way.
stuff. You just couldn't
Yeah,
do the
you
fun
couldn't come
stuff.
back and my blue light and all that stuff.
Oh, I'm talking about going to jobs.
Oh, that too. Yeah. Well, the blue light with the jobs.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, all right. So was that part of you getting hired? Was that part of an expansion, or had somebody left, or because you said at
It
that
was
point
part
there
of it.
was just one
It,
driver?
it, it was more, yeah, no, it was more part of an expansion because
Okay,
back then the volunteerism was starting to decline a little bit in daytime. Guys weren't able to come around to the firehouse at all, so it was
okay.
yeah. So that was part of that. Even in my volunteer days, the volunteer chief that was there, I always joke with him because he doesn't remember writing me up when I was a probationary member, but I always remember it and I always bust the stones with it. Um, because my neighborhood I had to come out of with my blue light, he was a couple streets down from me. So I would try to beat him out. So he wouldn't be able to catch me because I was only a probie then. I wasn't supposed to have a blue light. But so back then when I was going to fire school, I actually got written up. I couldn't go on the firehouse side. I could only stay on the fire company side because
Uh,
he suspended me from that side till I passed firefighter one. Yeah, it was. We joke about it to this day. It's funny,
all right, all right.
but that's
So,
the fun stuff that you miss right there.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
you
got
know.
a 6 month suspension one time, but that's a whole nother story. Um, so moving along. So now you get on. Who were you? What was that
So,
like?
like back then, even when you got on, you were paid by the fire district. So you were
Okay,
only basically paid to go to fire calls in the fire district. Any type of mutual aid, there was a mutual aid truck, and there was a fire district truck and a mutual aid truck. So you had to wait for the volunteers to come up to take that truck out. If it was like a mutual aid call to another fire district, or Trenton, or
really?
Lawrence, or Ewing,
Even in the same town, you were
in the
watching
same
them
town.
take off.
Yep.
Wow,
You still had to watch them. You're paid to be there for the fire district. That's how it was back then.
wow. You know what? There's still a couple places around Monmouth County, I think, that are like that. Um,
Mhm.
where you can go to you can go to the district line and that's it.
Yeah,
Uh,
and you're right there, and that's it. Yep. And that's how it was back then. But the mentality has changed so vast since then. It's just you think about it now. It's like how things were and then how things are now. It's like so totally different that
oh
way.
well,
You know.
everybody's screaming for help now. You know,
Yeah.
and back then they were. I mean, like you said, there was a waiting list to get in.
Yeah, there was a waiting list to get into for volunteers, and it's just it's crazy how it's evolved and changed
Yeah,
since
now
then.
they're
So
just nothing.
like even back then, I was just a firefighter hired. I wasn't even a fire officer or anything. It was
Yeah.
just so if a volunteer didn't come up a volunteer officer, then I was the officer in the front seat, just kind of thrown into it. Like here you go.
Oh wow. So even as a paid firefighter, you were jumping in the back for a
Yep,
volunteer officer.
yep. A volunteer officer would ride the front seat, and I would jump in the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now what Whitehorse? I get mixed up with the different district. Well, what was the different districts in Hamilton? What was the
Uh
makeup of Whitehorse section?
huh. What do you mean makeup by?
Like what area of town?
Oh, so
Residential, commercial.
So Whitehorse is more residential by the Whitehorse Circle. There
Okay.
used to be the Whitehorse Bowling Alley. There was like used to be an old Sizzlers where um, Advanced Auto is right there.
Okay.
And the history behind it is that George Washington rode through town in a white horse, and he stayed at I believe the Yardville Inn. I want to say. So that's why that part of town was called White Horse because of George Washington riding through town on a white horse.
I didn't know that.
That's the history they told me through, from being a volunteer there and all.
I'll believe it. I'll
So it's
believe it.
just made up. You got the White Horse Circle, and it's more residential and more highway residential, if you want to say it that way.
Okay. Is that like 33, 295 area over there?
It's more 295, 195,
Okay.
Turnpike,
Okay. Okay. I
206.
know where you're at.
Yeah, right there. Yep.
Gotcha. All right. So now you move in as a career, the career side. What were you like banker's hours, 24s? What was?
I wish it was banker's hours. So I worked there for a little while before they hired another firefighter for days.
Okay.
So I would just work 8 to 4:30.
Okay.
So then when the other guy got hired, we did rotating shifts. One guy would work 7 to 3, and another guy would work, I believe it was 8 to 4:30, just to cover that gap, like
Okay.
that working hours type gap. And
Gotcha.
then so it was just like a weird type of coverage that way, and that's just how they wanted to cover. And then eventually it evolved, and we ended up getting working out 12-hour shifts. So we would work. One guy would work 4 12s, then he'd be off for 4 days. Another guy would work 4 12s, he'd be off for 4 days, and it would just keep flopping
All right.
that way with it. So, but they were long days. They were 12 hours. They were 6 to 6, and they were
Okay.
just long days.
Well, 6 to 6, you're getting up around 5 o'clock to get to work. And
Yep.
then by the time you get home at 6 o'clock, even if it was a slow day, it's 6 o'clock. You
It's
can't,
still
the banks
it's
are
dark when you
closed,
get
like
up.
laundromat's closed,
Yeah,
you can't
couldn't.
really
And
get
then
anything done.
we worked that shift, but the drivers, they worked 10s and 14s. So they would
Okay.
work 2 10-hour days off. No, they weren't off the middle day. That was a Trenton schedule. And then they would work 2 14-hour nights, and then they were off for 4 days.
Oh, so they were on a totally different schedule from the
Totally
firefighter?
different. Yep, totally different schedule.
All right.
So the firefighters were just days, and then the other guys were their 24 rotations through the 10s and 14s.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. Somehow. So, hey, you know what? Every department as they're growing, I see that, like this one has 4 guys and they work a rotate, but it works for them. And
Yeah.
that's what worked for you guys, and that's what made sense to you guys.
Yeah, at the
Um,
time, it filled in the gaps for when they felt that the volunteer turnout was low in the
yeah.
station itself, so it kinda worked out that way.
Okay. Um, so now, what kind of call volume were you guys getting? Were you guys taking in, and
So when I first got hired, all we did was fire runs. We didn't do any EMS runs or anything like that, and
were you doing
the most
extrication?
no, we were strictly
Oh, wow.
basically, we had 3 2,000-gallon-minute pumpers, and I basically called it a six-pack because the one was we had 2 that were two-stage pumpers, and then we had 1 that was a single stage, which back then we had a 5-inch task force, and that engine was on a 5-inch task force at the time with that. And probably the most calls I ran that year, my first year, was 300,
Oh, wow.
which we do that in less than a week here now,
I was
with the
gonna
new
say
department and stuff. It's
Hamilton's doing that in like a day.
like 2 days or so, we're running 300 calls, but
Yeah.
it, back then, that was a lot of calls back then, and, a lot of downtime, a lot of, trying to get training done and stuff like
Well,
that.
because you look at the early '90s and the '80s, and there was, fire alarms weren't as prevalent as they are now. So especially residential, you weren't getting
Yeah.
residential fire alarms during the day. You weren't getting, a lot of the commercial that we have now. That's, you know, it,
Right. No,
it's
you weren't, and it was so if you went to a fire, you knew you were going to a fire.
exactly,
You know,
exactly.
whether it
It's
was
something.
mutual aid or in your town, you knew you were going. It was a
Yeah,
fire. You know.
yeah. I remember when I was a little kid, my dad, as a volunteer, it seemed like every time his pager went off, it was actually a fire.
Yep, it was. Yeah.
Um, all right, so now, what years did Whitehorse start growing and end up with like a full crew on?
Oh, oof.
Because you got
I'm
promoted in what, 2013?
2007.
2007.
2007, I got promoted to captain. So I want to say a few years prior to that, because we were on the daytime. Um, we were trying to push for a daytime captain. So at that time, they just basically came out with a policy like, okay, well, 1 week you'll ride the front seat, 1 week you'll ride the front seat, and so at that it got to that point, we're like, all right, well, we need a daytime captain here. So then we ended up, having a test for it, and by that time, we had a list for it. So we only had one daytime captain, and then eventually we ended up with two. And then by the time I got promoted in 2007, we ended up having a daytime deputy chief, and we had a captain around the
Okay.
clock at that point. Or not around the clock, sorry, just on days. It was still daytime in 2007. We were 4 days on, 4 days off. With We had driver, officer, and firefighter. And the officer and firefighter were just 4 days on, 4 days off, daytime.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and that was still
The
back in
driver still had that
2007.
sweet schedule.
Still had that, yep, still had that 10
The
to
drivers.
14. And
That's
that's when we were starting to transition to the 24s, yeah.
See, I remember Hamilton had different. Everybody had like there was different schedules. There was different titles, and it was
Yep. And back
I don't.
then, before I was a captain, I did go into that driver's schedule because one of the guys retired, and I'm like, "Man, I gotta get into that schedule because I can't take days no more." And so I got into that schedule, and then I got promoted, and I'm back into that schedule. So, it's, hey, you gotta take the good with the bad,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know?
All right, so now, at what point did now I knew it was going on for many years. Always heard about Hamilton's going to be one department. Hamilton's going to be one department. At what point did the unions? Were you guys always one union?
So
Like
when
the
I
officers one union and the firefighters one union, or
No.
did the districts have different locals?
Um, so the town was actually always one union, and
Okay.
we were always local 84 as a firefighters union.
Okay.
Once they started to make officers, that's when we were still one union, but it was like not like an A and B local type thing, but it was still because there wasn't that many officers. It
Okay.
wasn't feasible
For
to
them to
make
have their own
the
separate
right to
finances and
split.
everything.
Yep. So
Okay.
then eventually, once we got to more officers, then we ended up splitting and having a 284 and an 84 local, and that was prior to 2007. But prior to me getting hired, we had they formed the local probably it had to be around 92, 91, around there. I forget when actually 84 was actually formed, but those guys were instrumental in us getting civil service
Okay.
and for us to have, because we used to be in public employees pensions,
Oh, okay.
and they were instrumental in us having those guys transfer their time into police and fire pension. So they ended up having to go to court over it and all that stuff. And that was prior to me getting hired. That's just some of the stories I hear from the guys, talking about it.
Okay.
So back in 2007 is kind of around that point when, 2005, 2007 is when 284 kind of formed up and split.
Okay.
I'm not sure exact year on that. I know it was within that time frame.
Okay. All right. So at what point did they start
So the
listing this?
consolidation part was started back in 1998.
Okay.
That's how far back it went. So I went digging today, and I started looking, and So back in 1998, there was a study of the fire EMS services delivery in Hamilton Township. And this had to deal with the fire commissioners, fire marshals, chiefs, fire company presidents, EMS squad representatives, and career staff representatives. So this was a basic overview of how the service worked in Hamilton. And then in 1999, there was a tri-data study that ended up, I think this one was done by Mayor Rafferty back in the day. And this had to deal with similar to that, but we also had paid EMS in the town who was by Hamilton Township EMS. And
Really?
they were part of these studies here. Yep. And then moving fast forward to that was this was the 1998 Tri-Data study, which was a final from those studies there.
Okay.
So I dug all that out, and it's everything I've been collecting through the years
Now,
with that.
now who brought this up? Because obviously it wasn't the 40 fire commissioners. But who, like, was it you guys? Was it the residents? Was it the town itself that started saying, "Hey, this doesn't make sense. Why do we have why do we have 9 different fire departments in the town?"
So back in
And not
1998 and around that time, it was myself and a couple other guys from Local 84. I wasn't president then, but we had the local president, and we're like, we got to do something. We can't, we need to get more guys on the job. We need the same contracts. So we started visiting Cherry Hill, looking at what Cherry Hill did because they consolidated in 1994 and they're still consolidated and still running today. And we had meetings with them, and it was our union that started it back then.
okay.
And we did get pushback from the commissioners and the volunteers because they were still active back then. They were still big back then.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of basically information gathering at that point with all that.
I
It didn't
mean,
have traction as much. These studies here were basically either done by the township back then, just to see what, like, hey,
yeah, because
we're
the
gonna,
studies aren't
you
cheap
know,
to get them done, and they're not.
no, they're not. Yep.
It's not something that one person can just take on and do overnight. They're very in depth, no matter who you go to, who you bring in.
Yep.
I was gonna ask a question. So now you bring up Cherry Hill and their consolidation.
Mhm.
And maybe this is a question for later down the road as you get into as we get into the weeds of the process. But why did you guys choose to go municipal department instead of staying one new fire district?
That was
Or was
actually
that or was that
that
option not given?
it was given, but not given at the same time. I think they just wanted to basically consolidate and just go municipal because if you went a fire district, then you would have to, if that didn't work out, well, then you have to get petitions again and dissolve that fire district and go
Yeah.
municipal. So it was just easier to put all the municipal apparatus,
Okay.
firehouses, everything under that one umbrella of a municipal fire department
Okay.
and work from there.
Okay. I gotcha.
Because then you
Makes
would
sense.
still have repetitious. You'd still need your own BA, your own finance department, your own HR department, and
Well,
everything. And
and that's why I ask because you said you were looking at Cherry Hill's model of
mhm.
dissolving the different districts into one district, and that's why I was wondering, what were the benefits of going to municipal government rather than going to your own separate fire district.
Um,
But you
yeah, looking at Cherry Hill though too, they're still running. They still have to. I know one of the biggest things was the elections every year. So you would still have to elect your board of fire commissioners. You would still
yeah
have to get your budgets passed by the taxpayers. Even though that moved to November now, it used to be in
yeah
February, so they can move that and all. Um,
the
but
secret
you
me
still had that
the secret
the,
election.
the secret election in February. You had the 2% cap
Yeah.
that you still had to deal with. So if you're a municipal department looking at back on it now, you have a bigger 2% cap that you could deal with, and you have
Yeah.
a bigger capital budget you could deal with to get equipment and supplies and stuff that you need
Yeah. Makes sense.
for it, you know. So
Makes sense.
me myself, my own personal opinion, I wanted a fire district because I felt the protections were there with it, but that wasn't basically our vote to do. You know, we got the petitions and went through that process, and once it got to the municipal level, that's where the vote came through because we had a lot of meetings that went on to get to that point, even to say, hey, whether you're a fire district or a municipal department.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, so now let's get into the real. So what year did you guys start? Because I know you guys were pretty much running as one department. You guys were all mostly wearing one set of gear. You guys were mostly, identifying within as one department without being one department yet. At what point did you guys start kind of doing that yourselves at the boots on the
Ooh.
ground level?
So we finally consolidated everything in 2020, 2021, once COVID hit. Prior to that, it took us, I'm gonna say, 4 years. Yeah, I want to say like 4 years for us to get petitions, or 3 years it was. Trying to remember. It was a long time ago. Um, so this was 2005 years. Yeah, probably 2015, 2016, around there.
Okay.
Um, it took us to get the petitions signed, and that was the biggest thing because you needed a certain percentage of voters to sign off in every single fire district. And we went out every day, every weekend, every event that we had. Um, the guys were, our guys were pushed to their limits to try to even get these petitions. And every time you get them signed, then you have to take them to the clerk, and then the clerk would have to verify that they're registered voters. And if you're not a registered voter, your vote didn't count. So then we had to go out and get more petitions to get them signed. So that was like, to us, I think that was the longest process. And our guys were getting burned out. I
Yeah, I could
give
see
them
that.
so much credit for it, but they did awesome with it, and they pushed hard for it. And how firemen are. Once you get them together to push, which it honestly it didn't come easy to go back to it. When we actually voted at a union meeting to say, hey, are we going to go through this or not go through with this? And we only had one firefighter that stood up and said, hey, I'm new on the job, and I don't think we should do this, because he was protected in his fire district, and he felt if we consolidated, he was going to lose his job.
Hey, I gotta respect that, especially
Yeah, absolutely.
a new guy having the set to stand up in a union meeting and say, yeah, now
Yep.
I'll
And
be the one
now,
voice against.
yeah,
And
now he's a
I was
captain.
just gonna say that. I was just gonna say, is that was there anybody that, going through the trials and tribulations of the whole process, was there anybody that was like, you know what, f this, it's never gonna happen, I'm done?
We we had a few guys, I would say. We might have had guys that might have said stuff behind closed doors and we didn't know about, but most overall, everybody was like, "Yeah, let's get this done," because as things started progressing, things in their fire districts were, getting worse and worse, because not all the fire districts were bad and not all were good either. So it wasn't, it was just a whole mixture of things. But as things progressed, things in the districts that were good ended up going the other way too. So the guys were like, you know what, let's just get this done.
Yeah. Well, because I remember, I mean, there were stories of fires across the street from one firehouse, but it was on the other side of the district line, and that district didn't call this district, and they're standing here across the street in gear watching a
There
house burn.
Yep, absolutely. There was times where I was a driver at nighttime. A house fire would come in Rustling's district, which was Fire District 3. We had no volunteers show up, and I knew the driver down there and the one guy that was on. There was only two guys on. and I knew they were going to the fire. And I'm like, you know what? I put the tone out again, and I just took the truck just to get a water supply
Yeah.
because that's how it was back then. But you tried to, even though we were one union, still weren't one fire department. So back then it was just you tried to help out any way you could.
Well, there was 8 fire districts. There was 40 commissioners, 8 different fire chiefs.
Yeah,
You know, that is,
21 contracts.
that's insane to me.
Yeah.
21 but I mean, like you said in White House alone, you had a driver position, you had firefighter's position, and a captain's position. Like there was 3 different
And then,
contracts right there.
and then you had a deputy chief during the day. That was another contract.
That's a 4th contract. Now,
Yep.
did any of the individual, like say District 2 and 3, I don't even know if those 2 touched, but started operating together before the actual consolidation, or it was just
So
they were all still mutual aid to
there
each
was a
other?
time we kind of just went mutual aid to each other, but once all the career guys started getting hired, we took it amongst ourselves to try to work towards with each other, training, fires, just trying to bring everything together. Uh, Before even that, the chiefs that were career chiefs, they had their Hamilton Township Career Association, Chiefs Association. They
Okay.
had their own handbook. They tried to follow our township-wide policies and procedures. But it was hard because I could write a policy here and say,
Hmm.
yeah, that's good, but the guy in the other district will say, you know what, we ain't following that. And there's
Yeah.
no recourse that you have because you're basically
You're not my
separate
boss.
municipalities. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
not my boss. Yeah. So you're looking at
Separate,
basically 8 or 9 different municipalities throughout,
uh, in one town.
in one town because you have your own tax rate,
Yeah.
your own money, so you're governed, your own selves basically.
Yeah. That's insane.
And then we also there was a time where I think it was 3 or 4 of the districts they tried to do a thing called a joint meeting, which was like you're almost consolidating, but you're not, and you come to an agreement. It was more like shared service, and that
Well, that's
never
what I'm
really
talking.
played
Like,
out.
did they
Yeah.
start doing that kind of thing?
They did, but
And
then it just didn't pan out. We just kept pushing forward with the consolidation part of it
Mhm.
because the joint service, joint committee and all that seemed like it was just gonna be messy, and we felt consolidation was the better way to go, get
Yeah,
it
why
all done through
why
there.
expend all this energy to do it halfway?
Yep, and
Just
then
expend the same amount of energy to do it all the way.
so we put it all into, consolidation.
All right. All right. So now what I mean, how did that how did that even go? Like was I can't even imagine. There's so much like not 8 fire districts, 8 different volunteer fire companies, 21 career fire contracts, and then the municipal government. Like I can't that
We
just
we've had,
boggles.
yeah, we had committees and, prior to me taking over as union president for, Local 284, the prior union president, they did presentations in front of council. We've had a couple near misses of firefighters almost getting killed. So we had a presentation for council with that. And then finally, one council member said, let's start this consolidation. So he started helping us because we had the argument of we're unsafe. Our equipment's unsafe. We're not training together. We're not doing this together. We're doing it ourselves, but we need it to be run by one fire chief, deputy chiefs,
Hmm.
captains. Like it all needed to be the same. So he helped us kind of get it started that way a little bit, and also our state FMBA helped us get it started. They were a big supporter of us on the big
Okay.
weekends, getting all the members to come down, putting out blast emails to go get those petitions, and on top of the petitions, we as executive boards had to have meetings with civil service, the DCA,
Yeah.
pensions. It was, meeting after meeting after meeting to make sure that guys, number one, didn't lose their jobs. They didn't lose a cent in pay. They didn't lose their pensions.
Hmm.
Um, So it was a lot of a political, also having a lot of political people help us get to there too.
Hmm.
And that was because honestly, we were, besides Cherry Hill, we were the biggest consolidation in New Jersey.
Yeah, you guys in North Hudson, I could say. But I mean,
Yeah, and
they were five different. They were actually
5
five
different
different
towns.
municipalities. Yeah.
Yep.
Um.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So, and I mean that goes back to 1999 as well.
Yep. Does.
They made that consolidation.
Yep.
Um. So now the consolidation. So now that you guys are one department, what's the give our viewers a rundown of the department: engines, trucks, how big's the town, population, square mileage, kind of thing.
So population wise, we're 90 plus population. It's 42 square miles, the entire town. We have, we consolidated down. We still own, the town still owns most of the firehouses except for Decoux and Colonial. They're in a process right now of going through and buying Whitehorse, but all the other houses, most of them were fire districts. If they weren't, last year they ended up buying Nottingham Firehouse. So they're working with the volunteers to still keep them at their houses, but also taking over the cost and repairs and everything with the house throughout the town. We have 4 engines. So we have engine 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have 1 squad. We have 1 rescue. We have 2 trucks. One is a tiller and one is a mid-mount bucket. And did I say the rescue?
Yes.
And the rescue. We have 2 marine units that go with the rescue and the squad. We do extrication, trench rescue, high angle rescue. We still do all the specialty stuff that back when we were consolidated, Fire District 3, Fire District 2, and Fire District 6, they were the ones doing all the high angle rescue, trench, building collapse. They were the ones doing all that. And now we have 2 specialty units that split up the disciplines to do all that
Okay.
throughout the
Now,
town.
do you guys have a hazmat mission, or you guys call Trenton or Mercer County or?
Um, yeah, I'd rather not talk about that one.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Moving
I don't
right
want to
along.
get into that. Yeah.
Okay. Um. So your battalion chief. Do you guys have one battalion and one deputy on,
So our
or
structure within that, it went from chief of the department to deputy chief. So we have 2 deputy chiefs. We have 8 battalion chiefs, 34 captains, and then 89 firemen, I want to say, or 90 firemen.
okay?
And it's like a
So you
hundred
have two
and
battalions per tour.
yeah, one north and one south per tour.
Okay. Okay. Similar to Trenton.
Yeah, similar. Yeah, it's like
North
a north and
battalion,
a
south
south.
battalion.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And then the 2 deputies are daytime. We have operations deputy, training deputy, deputy in charge of special operations, RTF. We also do. So in charge of that.
Okay. All right. Cool. Um. Trying to trying to keep track of where we're at.
Yep.
So now 4 engines, squad, rescue, 2 truck companies,
Yep.
where obviously houses aren't staffed like they, obviously the 8 firehouses that they had at one time aren't still staffed. How did they decide? Was it call volume
So right
or
now, the only firehouse that isn't staffed is Colonial.
okay,
That's the only firehouse that isn't staffed. All the other ones are fully staffed.
okay.
Um,
Oh wow,
they,
solo truck companies. That's awesome.
yeah. Well, the
Oh,
and truck 1 is in the house with the rescue. So it's
okay,
truck 1, rescue 1, and battalion 1. So they're
okay,
out of Mercerville out of 5 Points. So they're a the dual house, if you want to call it, or a
okay,
triple house. Um, engine 3, they're by themselves. Truck 2 is by themselves on my side with the battalion.
okay.
And then we have the squads by themselves, engine 2's by themselves, and engine 1's by themselves.
Now, how did
And
you
engine
guys?
4 too.
Okay. Now, how did you guys decide when you came with the one department? Because I remember there was that giant. It was during COVID times. There was the giant, the mass swearing in. Everybody had to essentially get
Yeah, that
rehired
was
by the township.
we had all
Uh,
get sworn in, and it was a logistical nightmare in the beginning, but the guys worked through it, and with the town, the help of the town, we ended up
yeah,
working it out. Yeah,
yeah, I remember that.
yeah,
It
that's
was
definitely one for the history books to do it that way.
crazy, crazy.
Yeah.
Now, how did you guys decide what firemen were going where? Like,
So there was a bidding process, and no, I'm sorry, it wasn't a bidding process. That's these years here. Um, oh no, there was, yeah. So you had a choice. So you had a one, two, and three choice on where you wanted to go,
okay,
and you gave that to the chiefs. So we had the fire chief. We had provisional battalion chiefs at the time because we didn't have any, testing until after we consolidated.
hmm,
So you put in what your home station wanted to be and what your second and third choice was. So they got together and figured out where everybody would be a good fit and move. And they had they basically had a scoreboard, and they put all the companies in and put you where you wanted to go, what your first choice was. And then, then the chiefs had their discussion and moved everybody around. And basically it was like a draft night. So we had a live video of it, and your name came across the screen on where you wanted to go, and that's where you ended up. Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah, it was a crazy process, but thinking about it now, but it ended up it's part of the history books now.
Knowing firemen, there had to be steak and beer involved in that.
No comment on that, but I don't know if there was. There might have been. There might have been.
But no, that's awesome. So now I have a couple pictures here of this young gentleman.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's my boy right there.
What year? What year did he get on?
6 years ago, so that's 24, 2000. What? Because he got hired in the fire district at Colonial, so that's
Okay.
it's
Uh,
18.
the four. Okay, yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah. Yep. I was trying.
How many
Oh man.
firemen does it take to?
Yeah, I had to take off my shoes.
So now, is there? That was one of the questions I wanted to ask. Is there still a volunteer element in Hamilton Township, or?
There still is a volunteer element. It's right now. So you can go to Colonial Firehouse, and we have a special service unit. We have fire police. They come out and assist us. They help us with training, which is great. They fill our bottles for us. So if they want to be active, that's how they're active right now. They do have the
Okay.
Fire Police Association. They help out tremendously on big accidents, telephone poles, storms that come through. They're an asset to us in that aspect of it. So there's that type of volunteer base. Nobody right now. When we first started, we had like maybe one or two that actually rode on a truck with us, but then they get hired as a career guy somewhere else. So they're not,
Yeah,
it's kind of like a stepping stone that they want to get hired within the fire department.
it's a
So
big commitment for somebody who's not trying to move to that next level.
it
It's a big
is.
commitment, and it's showing across the country, and it's rough.
And that's
You
actually
know,
how my son started. He came from Whitehorse, and I said, listen, if you don't like it, then you can quit because you're only volunteering your time, see how
yeah,
it is, how you like it, go through the training and all that. And he ended up loving it. And he's been on the job 6 years now.
yeah, good for him. Good for him. Um, where's he at now?
Uh,
Where's
so
he
he started
working?
out at Colonial, and he ended up being on a squad at Mercerville. And then through bidding process and everything else that happened, he ended up being on the squad back again since we put the rescue up because we used to have two squads. He's in at DQ.
Okay, all right,
So that's where our squad's housed out of that firehouse.
all right. So, now, do you guys have a training facility or of your own, or you just go to? I mean, Mercer is right in town. So, well,
Yeah,
right
it's
out of
close to
town.
yeah, it's kind of close to town. So Our training, most of our training is done in-house unless we have to do our live burns and all of our mandatories. And then we do have a Fire District 3 ended up being a training facility, and also they transformed it into our OEM center also. So
Okay.
it's kind of like, so it does two jobs there too. So we could use it as our OEM center if we have to activate, and
Okay.
also as our training center. Yeah, they have a
Oh,
bunch of computer stations set up, big TV monitors, stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty nice over there. It's all redone upstairs.
that's great. Um, so what? I mean, anything I'm missing? Like, I mean, please throw it out there. Big incident
Uh,
that helped push the change or anything.
I don't know about big incidents. Like I said, the near firefighter injuries that we had, the maydays, a couple of those were the ones that really pushed um,
Like,
us to
I'm sorry.
consolidate.
I may be forgetting something. I don't. I'm not familiar with what you're talking. I
Um, I do have it here somewhere, and that was from. Oh, the other thing is too, real quick. Um, 2017 is when they did the consolidation study for the state of New Jersey. Came in and did it for nothing.
okay.
Which we had some controversy back then with this study on the way some of the things went. So, long story short, we feel as a union that it was altered back then. We could never really prove the whole thing. So that's a little bit of controversy within our consolidation was that state study. We don't feel it was altered by the state. We feel other people had hands into it.
Oh, I thought
Made
that
some
was in the
phone calls and
newspaper that
conversation.
was.
Yeah, but it
I,
was never really totally proven. So yeah,
gotcha.
that's a little controversy I'll give you with that.
All
Um,
right.
and this study was done by, I think it was Don Huber. He used to work for the state of New Jersey, um, who did it. So, but it wasn't any controversy with him at all. It was, some other parties that were involved with that. The
All right.
trying to remember, there was like a Lillian Avenue job where there was a fireman that went down, and there was it was a basement fire that we almost had firemen get killed on.
Now, was
Um,
it like short staffing issues, command issues,
it was short.
accountability?
It was all that. It was short staffing, accountability, response times. It all played a factor into most of the incidents. I think it was like three incidents that it pushed us to really say, "Hey, we need to have a safer department."
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's scary shit.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Um,
Um,
and
so
it's really
go
what's
ahead.
that? Go ahead. No, no, no. Go ahead.
No, no. So, like our training division now, it's part of that consolidation. Make sure that we have all our mandatories, our training going. Before we never had that. It was all individual districts trying to keep that training schedule going, and it was just impossible to keep all that up. Even though we, how firemen are, that's what we do. We get things done, and
Yeah.
no matter you know
Well,
whatever it is, you try to get it done.
yeah. Do whatever we can to make it work.
Yep, exactly.
Um, all right. So, I mean, what else do you really do you have? I mean,
Definitely pork roll, not Taylor ham.
you're, you're at that.
Definitely
You're at
pork
the.
roll.
You're beating me to the Jersey
I,
questions.
I I had to beat you
Uh,
to it. I had
I
to.
was seeing. I was seeing what else. What else you had? If you had anything that you want to bring out, if crews that you worked with, jobs that you worked. I mean, were you working for
Um,
this beast behind us?
oh, that one there. No, I actually wasn't working. I ended up coming in to work on that.
Okay.
That was a full department recall on that. That was just the biggest fire in the town's history. That was a massive, massive fire.
And I mean,
I
that wasn't too long after you guys consolidated, right?
No, no, it wasn't. And I ended up being water supply on the backside of that. So I ended up being the chief in charge of getting all that set up with the tower ladders and the ladders in the back of the building.
Okay.
Um, That was a long fire. Guys did a hell of a
Yeah,
job, though. I'll tell you that. They
you
really did.
you guys were there for about a week, right?
Week or longer because it just kept flaring up on us.
That was now. What was that building originally? That was like something with the war, wasn't it?
It was. I know it ended up being just basically a storage warehouse for old antiques, and the guy was buying a lot of pallets of stuff. Um, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't want. I want to say Anchor Thread, but Anchor Thread's in Groveville. That's not Anchor Thread. I can't remember what it was used for, but it's definitely the war era.
Yeah,
Yeah,
big. That's a big building.
it is.
It was a long night, long
Oh
couple
yeah,
nights.
yeah. I was there for
Uh,
over 17 hours. I know some guys were there longer.
Now having that as the on the after, because that had to be within a few months of the official consolidation. How
That was
do you think
2022, wasn't it? I think
was
that
it 20
fire.
was it that long after?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was 2022.
I also think feel like COVID was
Or
only yesterday, that torture.
you know what?
Um,
Yeah, yeah. I think it 2022, 20. Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
it might
May.
be.
It was around May, maybe May of
Fire.
2023. I want to say. My dates are so messed up anymore.
Yeah,
I
like I
I still
said,
feel like I got COVID sometimes.
I was gonna say I feel like COVID was just last week that the world was shut
Yeah,
down. Um,
I feel like I get that COVID fog
Now,
sometimes. It just doesn't go away.
right, right.
Yeah.
So now, how do you feel that was a good, essentially, trial by fire? Like you said, that was the biggest fire in the history of the township. Do you feel that was a like, hey, we're going in the right direction with this department. We're doing good. It's showing that we're coming together and it's working, and the idea of consolidation, did its job. Or
Oh,
do you feel like, oh, you know,
no, absolutely, I do because at the time once that fire hit, you ended up having the chiefs there and getting everything set up, and the mutual aid coming in, the coordinators come in. Back then you had coordinators, but you don't have them like you did today, and that just kind of brought everything together. That it's like, you know, it helped. It helped a lot. Don't get me wrong, there was some bad there too, but it helps bring out the good and the bad, something like that. So you you learn from it, you live from it, and then you train on it, and then you move on from there. So I think it definitely something like that definitely helps.
okay. Yeah, absolutely. Um, Now, if you could, what's one thing, if you could think about all the changes, is there one thing you'd take back from the different from your individual fire district? Like,
Um,
is there one thing you miss?
One thing I miss, I don't, I don't know. Like it's kind of hard, because when you first get hired, like you always say like they're the great years, and you do miss those years. So
Yeah.
there were so many great years and so many good things and mentors that I had that progressed me forward. There wasn't really one great thing because I've had a lot of great things throughout those years, whether it was through the union, through the career staff that I worked with, the guys I met through the union, all that. I've had a lot of great years through that. So I
All
really
right.
don't have one big great take from it,
No,
even
no, no.
to this day.
I'm talking
But
about like something you miss from being just Whitehorse Fire District. Is like, just having your one crew, and just like, do you miss that, or like, would you take that
um,
back in a heartbeat, kind of thing, or now you're everything's better
I
off one department?
no, I do like I do miss working like when it was just like the drivers there like that. I miss that part of it. But now since we have our crews and work together the way it is, and
You have
you
a
have a
different
chance
family.
different family to work with everybody throughout the town. it's like it's part of the job, that you just love that you got that family,
Yeah.
besides what you had back then.
Hmm.
Because back then it was just you guys in the house, and you're cooking for one or two of you maybe for lunch or dinner. Now you're cooking for 7 or 8 guys in the firehouse, and it's more, I think more family that way than, back then you had this little tiny family, and had a
Yeah.
little knit family you were close with, but now you have a broader and bigger family.
Absolutely. All right.
Yep.
Yeah, because I mean, I wonder, like, there's so many good things that came out of it. If there was one thing that you were like, you know what, I really miss just being three of us in the building, and that was it.
I miss
Something like.
the I miss the 300 calls a year and sleeping through the night. That's about. Yeah. Now
Come
you're
work with me. You can sleep
yeah
through the night.
sleep through the night. You get woken up for medicals and stuff. That was a big transition too back then. Back in the 90s, early 20s, or 2000s,
Starting to take the EMT
transition.
role.
Yeah, taking that EMT role. That was a lot for guys to do that, because then once you got hired as a fireman, you had to be an EMT also.
Yeah.
And us in Fire District 6, we rode out as an EMT, one of us on a truck. So if you rolled up on a cardiac arrest, you were it. You were doing it by yourself. You were doing a full cardiac arrest by yourself.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and even at nighttime too, if the volunteers couldn't come up for you're riding by yourself as a driver, you would put the tone out for a cardiac arrest. If nobody showed up, you took the truck by yourself and went and did the cardiac arrest yourself.
Wow. Now, what year did the township go away from the EMS program? Because now they're
It was right after the
they have
data
contract, right?
study. Yeah, it was right after it was right after one of the data studies that they did. I'm not even sure if it was 1998. One of them said that they needed to get rid of it. I forget which one that was. But even then, they were an EMT and paramedic, so it was a pilot program that they were doing. So you didn't have to have another separate unit. So you had a medic on the truck and an EMT, and basically they were
Okay.
both medics. But if one of them took off, you could replace them with an EMT, and you didn't have to worry about
Gotcha.
2 units.
Gotcha. Wait, so they covered all of Hamilton with one truck?
Yeah, one truck. Yep.
Holy
Yeah.
Jesus.
We didn't have that many medicals back then. I
Yeah.
mean, you still had Squad 11. Um, I think you still even had 11th Zone back then in Trenton. You still had Rustling. I think were still up back then.
Okay.
So you still had those other ambulances that covered for
Oh,
them.
so
So
they
they were.
had volunteer ambulance services in town.
Yep, they still had some volunteer
Okay.
ambulance service. Yep, covering for them. Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So that is definitely something. If I have one tip to you guys, don't even talk about it. Don't even talk about it in the firehouses. Don't say those three letters. Don't ever say those three letters. Uh, so I digress. All right, let's get into the Jersey questions here.
Okay.
Question number one, you said it's pork roll. We know that.
Definitely pork roll.
I
Yep.
mean, because you don't order case Taylor ham. I mean,
No, you
that's
don't. And I grew up right
sacrilege.
around the corner from there.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
It's right there. Best pizza.
Di Lorenzo's, but not Robbinsville, Yardley.
Okay. All right.
So I didn't even realize, once they were in Yardley, and we're like, hey, let's go there one night. So we went there, and I was like, wow, this tastes just like the Berg pizza. So I love going to one in Yardley. I don't Robbinsville, I still go there, but I like the one in Yardley a lot better.
All right. I'll have to check that one out. I've only been to Robbinsville.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same type of pizza, but I don't know why. I just think it just reminds me of when I grew up in the Berg.
Okay. All right. I like it. Now, do you go to the beach or you go down the shore?
We go down the shore
All right.
all the time. Yep.
All right. What beach? What beach of choice do you go to when you go down the shore?
So if we're going down the shore, we're either going to Seaside, Point Pleasant, or Belmar for the day. But if we're
All
going to
right.
go down the shore on vacation, we go to Wildwood.
Okay. All right. I like it. I like it. Um, Does Central Jersey really exist?
You're talking to me in Central Jersey, so definitely.
Hey,
There is definitely a
watch
Central
the
Jersey.
show. You've seen there's different, many different answers.
There is, I know. Yep. Yeah, we're definitely in Central Jersey. And we have that Mercer bubble. Every time a storm comes through here, it
Just
never
blows right.
hits us. It just
Yep.
blows right over us. Yep. So that's how
That's
I
how
know
it
this is
was when I
Central
lived in.
Jersey.
That's how it was when I lived in Plainsboro. It just
Yep.
you heard it coming
It
through
just
like Bucks
splits.
County, and then it just whoop.
Yep. Yeah, it's not that often we get hit that hard with storms.
Uh, all right. Who are or were some of your mentors?
So some of my mentors were the guys I got hired with, those drivers back when in 1994 through those years, because they were the guys. They taught me how to drive. They taught me how to cook in the firehouse, taught me how to clean, um, training aspect. They've they've taught me all of that. It was like just old school type training that you just never forget. And a lot of those guys were not even from my fire district too, but most of those guys were. One guy was from Fire District 8. He was also our union president. He was one of my mentors back in the day. And the volunteer fire chief who wrote me up, he was another one of my mentors. So I had I miss the old days like that with those guys because they've taught me a lot. And I would wish some of the guys that are on the job now had those guys back then now to kind of show them. Not that there aren't any good guys now, but there is. But it's just kind of like an old school way of they had of teaching.
Yeah. No, I agree 100% because, like I say all the time on the show, I was fortunate enough that when I was young, when I was a little kid, that's all I ever wanted to be was a fireman. And my dad would come home from work in the career firehouse, and I would beg him and beg him, beg him until he brought me to the volunteer firehouse to play on the trucks. And then on the weekends when my dad was working, my mom would bring me, my brother and sister to see my dad at work. And, I grew up around those guys that were in the firehouse with him and the different
Hmm.
mindsets and mentalities. I mean, the volunteer firehouse, there was guys like I talked with Chief Sims about some of them. A guy named Tommy Prine. This guy was a World War II vet, was on the beach of Okinawa,
Oh
and
wow.
he was a BAR man and a flamethrower man. And
Oh wow.
but I mean, little tiny little guy, quiet, soft spoken, and you never would have known that part of him.
Hmm.
But he was that guy that Monday he was retired when I was a kid, and Monday through Friday, actually Monday through Monday, every day he was down there taking care of either the truck that was in service for their company or the antique, the 1930 Mac they had. This
Okay.
guy was just, and I mean, he would take. I was 6 years old. I was nowhere near being a member of the fire company. He would pull the
Right. Right.
truck out in the parking lot and show me how to pump a fire truck. I mean, at
Hmm.
6 years old, I was grasping, pull this lever, pull this, and the hose, and
Yeah, that's awesome.
spin this little black wheel looking thing, and
Yeah.
water comes out of it. So I had no grasp. But
Yeah.
when I was getting to learn, when I was hitting that teenage years and I was a junior and stuff, I was learning from that. I was like,
Hmm.
holy shit, this makes sense now because I was grasping it. But like you said, they had a way back then of teaching you without teaching you.
Yep.
And
Yeah, they did. And a
you
lot of firemen too are hands-on firemen. They're
yep.
hands-on guys. They like to learn by, hands-on. And one guy when I first got on the job, he was our fire marshal, and he always just pulled you aside and say, "Hey, don't do it like that. You got to do it this way." And he always taught you an easier way on how to do it. And to this
Yeah.
day, I still teach guys that way sometimes when I'm, teaching guys how to pump.
Yeah.
And it's totally different way. And he was like, to this day, I could still just picture him and how he used to, teach us how to do all that stuff. And he was one of the guys that drove our 1953 Ward LaFrance.
Oh,
Like
that
he
thing was
actually
beautiful.
he drove that to work in fires. So, from him to teach me from that to the modern day trucks, it was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
No computers, no.
No computers,
That's
no, it was
probably an
all
old
manual.
chain throttle, right?
It was,
With
yeah,
the
it was old
with the
chain
chain hooked
throttle.
in.
Yep, you had to
Yeah.
double
That
clutch
was
it to drive it if you missed the gear. And those guys back then, they used to drive that and not even clutch it. They would just know when that gear synced up and
yeah.
pop it right in. It was amazing.
Can't even drive
Yeah.
a manual.
Nah, I can. I used to drive it. I learned myself how to drive it. Yeah, it was
I
pretty
like it.
cool.
All right. So proudest achievement on the job.
Proudest achievements probably being there when my son got sworn in. I tell you, and then probably the second best to that is this big consolidation that I was a part of with everybody.
Okay.
It was seeing him get sworn in was just because I'm first generation firefighter and he's second, and like we were talking before, the names are the same too, all the way down to the middle initials. So
Yeah.
my dad had the same name too, but he didn't have that middle initial, so that kind of separated us that way. But being there for when he got sworn in was just like a proud day with it. Um, it hasn't been easy for him and I on the job to kind of because we try to separate each other from the job, me being a chief and then him being a fireman that way. But you know what? We make it work, and I wouldn't want it any other way. I'm so happy he's on the job with us and with me, and that's probably one of my biggest achievements on the job is to have him do that. And then the other was consolidation because our guys, I love the guys on the job so much, and I'm glad that we're at the point to where we have one contract that they have the health benefits, the pension. None of the guys on the job lost any money coming over. Nobody lost a job. We have more promotional opportunities. We have
Yeah.
all the way across the board. I feel that way it's better. Don't get me wrong, we do have our bad days with some things, but overall, when I go back and think about it, compared to the fire districts to now, I feel that we've had that big accomplishment as a brotherhood and as a department, and we all came together to do that. And now we just, basically 2000, 2001, we're a brand new department, so now we have to work and just kind of build off of what we have.
Yeah. Expand
You
the
know.
legacy. Create
Yep.
the new story, you know?
Yeah.
Or
Exactly. Yep.
really not even create the new story. Build off of the stories of past, you know?
Right. Build off of that past history of the fire districts, and
Yeah.
there's not too many guys on the job now could actually tell you stories about the fire district days. There's probably half our department, the other half have kind of grown through it.
Yeah. I mean, well, and you think about it, it's a piece of rope. You think of an old manila hemp rope. It
Mhm.
was three strands of string
Yeah. Yep.
into cord into rope. And
Uh-huh.
that's what the department did over the years. It was different fire companies, and then it was the fire company and the career staffs, and then now it's one department. It's one strong
Yep.
department.
One strong department. Yep.
Sound very philosophical there. I felt smart.
that
I think that might be the
was
smartest.
that was
We're gonna
good.
end right there. That's
Well,
it.
stop.
So, but no, that's awesome, and I like
Yeah.
seeing the different companies on social media with their patches, and they're building their own cultures and their own reputations and their own histories now, and that's awesome. I mean, I
Yeah,
love it.
they are. Yeah, the guys like that was one of the biggest things was get their own patch, make their own identity for their departments, their T-shirts.
Hmm.
So they all got together in their own departments, drew them all up, had the chief approve them. Once the chief approved them, and the town approved them, they were ready to go. And yeah, it's really good to see them out there. You see them out there training. You see them out there in the public's eye, whether it's at doing events at the schools or for the Miracle League, stuff like that. So it's great to have that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean,
Mhm.
that's one
Yeah.
of those things that it really um, it especially in the early infant stages of the new fire division, it helps you create that
It
culture.
does. Yep, it does. Yeah.
All right. So one last question, and then I'll let you go. What advice do you have for the fire service?
What advice? One advice I would say within the fire service is make sure you communicate with each other, because in our service itself, I could say training, or I could say this, or make sure you treat this guy right or whatever. But if you don't communicate properly with each other, you're never going to get through this service, because you need to communicate everything that goes on within the service, because that's what we live by, our communication.
Yep.
Whether it's a guy having a bad day and you say, "Hey, what's the matter?" You're helping that guy out, because if he's just going to sit there and be quiet, you're helping that guy out. Whether it's a guy having a hard time with training, you go up and you communicate with him, say, "Hey, why don't you try it this way?" A lot of that I've learned from all the guys I talked about, all the mentors and everybody, was to make sure you communicate. If you don't have that communication, that's where that rope you were talking about, it just
Yep.
breaks. And
Yeah.
it's, at that point, and that's where a lot of things I think fail at that point without that communication. So, I thought about that today too when I saw the one question, and
Mm-hmm.
that was one of my things I would hope would happen.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like you said, in this career, whether it's communications as in the literal sense of, hey, watch out, or sitting
Hey,
down
you
and
had a bad
having
call, and
yeah,
if the guy had a bad call, and you're like, "Hey, why is
yeah,
this guy quiet?" Or that type of thing. Because we could talk tactics, we could talk training, we could
exactly.
talk that, but if you don't have that communication aspect of it, and reach out to somebody or talk to
It's lost.
somebody, and it's all lost, it's all gone
Yep.
at that point.
You're 100% right. You can sit here and slap each other on the back and call yourself brother and stuff like that, but if you're not
Yep,
actually following through with it and communicating and becoming brothers and sisters, it's just a patch. It's just
yep,
just a cheap slogan.
yep, that's it, and it's just a T-shirt that you're wearing, and
Yeah. Um, or a tattoo that you got.
or a tattoo that you got. Yeah. They're like,
uh,
I shouldn't have got
so
that."
So, all right. So, do you have anything else? Any shout outs?
No, I don't have any shout outs or anything. I mean, as you can see behind me, you see I have I have an OEM truck behind me, a picture of it.
I
Since you
was
talked
wondering
about
what,
Bordentown.
truck that was.
Yeah, that's the Bordentown truck for OEM.
Okay.
So I took that position part time,
Okay. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when I took the battalion chief's test, I didn't know where I was going to place. I'm at my point in my life, I could either retire or stay, and I I placed okay to where I got, promoted, and so I kept both jobs, so I could do that job part time still and still work, for the department itself.
Okay.
So, who knows what the future is going to bring and what path I'm going to go to, but
Now, are
right
you
now
working? Do you work in the township building, or do you work with the fire departments, or how does that?
with
How does
OEM,
that? Yeah.
I work for the township, but I also, because they're fire districts in
Hmm.
Bordentown Township, so I kind of I work close with the fire chiefs out there. So it's a building reputation, or not reputation, building, um, just trying to build the relationships, I should
Okay.
say, out
Okay.
there, and getting it, to where it should be. But they're, so I basically work for the township itself, but I work out of, OEM is out of behind Derby Firehouse right
Oh,
there.
okay. Okay. The
Yeah,
old
that's where the
DPW
building
building.
is. Yep, and they just bought this car this year because they didn't have anything to, go to any calls, big incidents, storms, anything like that. So, the company we use in Hamilton, is the same company I used to build that car. They were out of Virginia.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Um, excuse me. Oh, that's what I was going to ask. What is Bordentown Township doing for EMS these days? I remember when I was Before I was
It,
at 322, they 322 ran the ambulance, and then when I was there, and then for many years, they contracted with Bordentown City. The one fire company was running EMS, but then
so
I
when I
remember
first
there
got
was a
on, yeah, when I first got on, they there's a lot of controversy between the volunteer aspect of it and the career, who they should have, and they were going to council meetings and stuff. So I wasn't really involved with that. But right now they have Robert Wood that runs out of. They cover the city and the township,
okay,
so they have the contract to do that.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but
All right,
I was like kind of on the tail end of that. So, but I deal with their supervisor with that. I deal with Team 85. I deal with the St. Francis Life out there, for sheltering, stuff like that,
okay,
So just trying to build all those relationships up within the town.
okay, cool. I
Yeah,
like it.
they're great people to work for too in the town. Very friendly. It's you know, reminds me of Hamilton a little bit. It's a tight knit town. Everybody knows
Yeah,
everybody, and
very,
it's very nice people in the town. And we just had our
absolutely.
fireworks event. It was like 3,000-4,000 people at the event. It was a decent turnout. It was a great
Very
night.
nice. Very nice. Where they trying to think where they used to do fireworks when I was back. I mean, that's going back 15 years ago, 16. Where
Yeah,
the
yeah, because they
I
just got that
think there was
field.
at the one school. I think they had it at a school back then. They had fireworks.
Peter Mutual School. Is
Maybe.
that it? Yeah, because now they got a field behind it, so there's actually not a bad
Oh
seat in the
yeah,
house
that's
there
the
for fireworks.
it used to
The
be like
soccer
corn.
fields.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That
Yep.
used to be like cornfields or something when I worked there.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, uh any shout outs, anything else? Anything coming up that you want to promote, or you guys
No,
doing
nothing I
a
could.
cigar dinner again, or
Yeah. No, not this year. We're not.
no?
So yeah, we have a firefighters foundation that I'm involved with. We are going to have some fundraisers coming up. We do have a timeshare that we raffle off every year.
Okay.
So we're trying to get that going again. So just basically look out for that. Cigar dinner, we're going to try to go again. But the guy that we have run it, he got injured on the job, so he's been kind of off the radar a little bit because of that. So he's trying to get his health back, and we wish him well for that. And we do have another captain. I wish him well, that they get back on the job. They got hurt at one of the fires. Um,
Oh shit.
so yeah, so
Hope nothing major.
uh, the nothing major that we know of right now. So hopefully, they're just healing up right now, and then we wish them well. Hope they get back on the job.
Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely.
they're probably just some of the 50/50 fundraisers that we'll have coming out for our firefighters foundation. Um, we do have, I believe, there's another playground build coming up too for Joey's Little Angels. They're building one
Okay.
somewhere. I don't think they've announced it yet. So we also help out with that with our foundation. Besides that, we don't waiting for summer to get done. Everybody off on vacation and everything
Yeah.
else. It's kind of going quick too. I mean, it's the end of July, so
Yeah. Very.
it's been a good summer so far, though.
Yeah, the nights are getting shorter again.
Yeah, they are. I know. I noticed that. Yeah. Yep.
All right,
Yeah.
Chief.
So,
Well, I will let you go. Enjoy.
all right, great. Thank you. I appreciate
I'm
having me on
gonna
the show.
bump you back to the backstage area. We'll say
Okay.
our goodbyes off the air. I'm gonna say good night to everybody, and I'll see you in a minute.
All right, great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, everybody. That wraps up run number 24 with Chief Nick Buroczi. Horrible. I'm terrible. I'm embarrassed. I will see you next week. We will have retired Captain Paul Tweedley from Trenton Fire Department, also the owner of Captain Paul's Dogs. Until then, stay safe and have a great week.